get in the front row. When you're here for this training today, you're kind of like doing that, right? You're here for the, you're sitting in the front row for the training. And I work hard to try to find topics that will really be tactical topics. So today we're going to be talking about which agencies sole source to 8As in particular, small businesses, at the end of the year. I don't want to go crazy on the numbers, but today is a numbers training. And one of the things to keep in mind is all this data I'm going to show you at the end of the training. I'll show you exactly how I got the data. So I don't want to just miraculously show you data. At the end of the training, you'll want to go in and figure out how to do it yourself. But the thing that struck me the most and made me want to do this week of training is that the end of the year spending is huge for 8A direct awards. 50%, right around 49-50% of the dollars direct awarded happened in the fourth quarter. And 67% of the contracts, the task orders, whatever you want to call them, 67% of those are the sole source awards. Those happen in the fourth quarter, July, August, and September, right? And so right in front of us, another couple of weeks, it's going to start. FY 2022 is the last year that we have real data from. And so 16,000 contracts, if you will, and that's a USA spending term, right? But 16,000 of those happened in FY 2022, and 10,000 of them happened in that fourth quarter. That's huge. And that means there's a ton of activity. And as we go through this week of training, I'm going to be trying to talk to you about that. One of the things that's really important to me is when you understand the information, when you understand who is doing all this activity, you begin to market and put your business development and capture efforts, especially as an 8A, right, towards the agencies that are actually going to buy from you. And so I'll talk about which agencies from the data are the ones most friendly to 8A sole source direct award at the end. But you want to make sure you're focused on them. Why work towards an agency that tends to spend most of their money in the first quarter of the year when there's these other agencies that just spend a ton? And you'll see what I'm talking about as we look at the data. One last thing I want to talk about is I almost never talk about direct award. I think 8A sole source and direct awards are great, but I think there's sometimes a crutch, and we don't learn during the 9 years of the 8A program to become good at sales so that when we get out, we can compete full and open on the small and full and open on the large, literally the full open opportunities. And so I always try to focus on just competing with opportunities that are in your core competency. But because we're going into the fourth quarter, I really do want to expand beyond the long-term success, the process, et cetera, that I teach, and really talk about sole sourcing and just driving into that. How can you be part of it? And by the way, if you're not an 8A, you can still be part of it by just teaming with 8As who could go after it. You could bring your subject matter expertise. Larges do this, smalls do this, you should do this. Okay, today's training, we're going to dive deep into understanding the dollars, just where's the money flowing. And then I want to look at it from the agency perspective, which agencies are doing these direct awards. And then finally, for those first three bullets, I want to show you what the data is showing us as it relates to products and services being bought. Like I said a minute ago, the last thing we're going to end with is I'll give you the step-by-step, because what I'll teach you is not going to be specific to your company, but the steps will enable you to go get the data that is specific to your company. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I teach tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results, and that's what I want for you. I teach this process right here for sales success. All the complex down to the simple. It's just 7 steps: research, targeting, outreach, lead to strategic relationships, enabling you to hear about slam dunk opportunities for your company so that you can write winning proposals that will win or bring in sales. And so it literally is a process that is, once you learn it, is easy to follow. All right, let's dive in and start talking about the dollars. And again, this is from FY 2022, last year. But I wanted to walk through, and you can see the numbers here, but I wanted to walk through so you understand this. Sometimes I hear people talking about, the government contracting world is $1 trillion market. It's not. That's not the world we play in. Yes, the government spends a ton of money, but that's not our world as government contractors, right? So let's understand that number all the way down. So in 2022, they had obligations of $4.6 trillion. Big number, who cares? And then their total contract obligations was $694 billion. really big number, right? But that includes battleships and large companies, things like that. Still blah, right? But total small business contract obligations was 160 billion in 2022. That is still huge, right? If you're trying to grow your company $1, $5, $10 million, when they're spending 160 billion, they're spending more than enough for me to figure out how to go get some, right? And then with my core competency, right? And then as you come down to the fourth bullet, the total 8A contract obligations was 32 million, or excuse me, 32 billion. And this is the amount that went to 8A companies in any way that they did it. Some of it could have been full and open, but it was an 8A winning it, right? So that's that number, 32 billion went to 8As. But the number for today that we're paying attention to is the total 8A sole source for contract obligations in FY22 was 8.6 billion. And remember that I said basically 50% of that happened in the last year. So let's take a look at the numbers. When you look at this slide, what I'm trying to show here is the monthly breakdown of how much was awarded. And again, I'm just using USA spending as my source data, right? So 8.6 billion broken down across the 12 months, beginning with October 2021, which was the beginning of fiscal year 2022, right? You can see here that the numbers begin to increase. It starts off a low spending of 211 million, and then it slowly starts going up, and it pretty much doesn't stop going up, right? It bounces a little bit, but it's going up to $1 billion in August. But then in September, it jumps to 2.6 billion. Huge percentage. And right in the middle of the slide, I've got the percentages. The first month of the year, 2% was spent on direct awards. The last month of the year, 30% was spent. Big difference in there, right? And so when you think about that, that's a really important set of numbers you want to pay attention to. Let's look at it one more way, because I don't want to dwell too long on those numbers, because this is where I'm trying to get to, right? Fourth quarter. If you take these same numbers and you take the 12 months and you just break it down into their quarters, the first quarter of 2022 had 10%, 10.5% of its dollars that went to sole source for 8A spent in that first quarter. And then it went to 17%. Then it went to 22%. And then it went to 50%, right? That is huge. The third quarter is 50 or 100% bigger than the first quarter, right? The third quarter here is 100% bigger than the first quarter in spend. And then the last quarter is 100% bigger basically than the third quarter. So the spend is huge. And what I'm trying to communicate here with the data and evidence is that the government absolutely does end of the year spending with 8A firms doing direct awards. And again, whether you're a 8A firm or not, it doesn't really matter. If you can identify opportunities that can be pushed together with a teaming partner who is an 8A, then you can push those towards sole source. Or perhaps those 8As are notified about opportunities for end of the year spending, right? And you're able to be part of that team to go after that opportunity. I just want to do a quick caveat, because I really do believe that end of the year spending happens the year before, right? What I'm talking about today and through this this week is about a lot of the money that just is being spent without a lot of planning ahead of time. But the smart play on trying to get end of the year contract wins for your company really begins a year before. You're trying to let them know, have them commit to ideas. Yes, we want these requirements. We just got no money. And then the whole idea of end of the year money is they say, anybody got a good idea that you wanted funded, but you didn't have funding? Yeah, I do. And then you move it forward. That's different than this direct spending that happens at the end, this feeding frenzy. So I'm just talking about this 1 week. Okay, really quick. If you don't know this is a 5-day training on end of the year spending. So tomorrow I'll be talking about where federal buyers find you for end of the year spending. So I'm telling you that they spend a lot, and then where are they going to go to find you? I talk about marketing must-do tasks for 8A firms if you want some of this end of the year contract spending, or if you even want to be considered for it. And then Thursday, it's ironic that I made a mistake right before I said the word mistake, but the top mistakes 8A government contractors make during the end of the year. This is huge, right? This is important that you understand what mistakes are being made that you can rectify in a matter of minutes or days. And then last one, Friday, we'll wrap up with the best way you can hear about 8A firms in particular can hear about sole source opportunities at the end of the fiscal year. So we'll dive into that. Hopefully you'll go sign up for that. Gus is probably dropping into the chat the link where you can go register for these. But if you registered for today's event, you're on my profile, just go find it. Okay, let's talk about departments that sole source 8A firms first. And then we're going to talk about subordinate agencies in these departments. And so if you're new to USA Spending, this is just a USA Spending graphic report. And basically, I just said I want to know FY 2022 who's sole sourced to 8A firms. Literally, those are the two searches, and I'll show you later. So the first thing that should just be jumping out at you is that the Department of Defense is just spending massive amount more than any other department that's out there. I don't even know how to do my math, but it's like, I don't know, 500% more than the Department of Health and Human Services, which is the second closest. And so what that tells me, if I was an 8A firm or when I advise 8A firms, is if you can get into DoD, get into DoD. Even if it takes you starting today and it takes you 2 years to get in there, start planning for it, because clearly DoD likes working with 8A firms. Just the numbers just tell me that. But so DoD is made up of multiple departments. So this is not a totally fair comparison, because you'll see in a minute the Department of Navy, Army, and Air Force are basically the same size as Health and Human Services and all these other guys. So coming down, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, HHS, these are the top spenders. So if you're an 8A firm, this data is kind of telling you that first. Second, it's also telling you these are the firms that tend to do end of the year spending, that fourth quarter spending that happens in there. So remember, there's $8 billion that happened in FY 2022. This chart is just showing the last quarter. So let's look here at the agencies underneath the Defense Department and then all the other ones. And so basically what these two boxes are doing is just the first 10 and the next 10. And I took a couple out that just didn't make any sense. So the first thing you can see, again, this huge thing, the Army is 1.2 billion spend, right? That is huge on their spend for sole source 8A contracts, right? This is not 8A spend or small business. That's 1.2 billion for 8A sole source. Compare that, like as it drops, the next closest is the Navy, right? Ironically, the Department of Homeland Security, if I had the same chart, their numbers would be much higher for HubZone, right? They're a lot more friendlier to HubZone. But in the 8A sole source world, the Army just is a clear leader. I was an Army guy, so I'm happy to see that. I love to push back in there. But look at the top three, right? Army, Navy, Air Force. They're just spending like mad with 8A firms. And so that tells you where to go. When you think about HHS, this is the next one. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. CDC is in the HHS. And so when you look at all the top 10, only CDC and then down here at the bottom, NIH are in there. And they have, I think, like 11 or 13 component agencies within HHS. And this allows you to start figuring out who is spending. DHS isn't overly friendly, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but they don't overly use 8A sole source according to the data, but U.S. Customs and Border Protection does. These guys right in the middle are part of DHS. And so you don't target the whole DHS, you come right into that one agency and you start trying to reach out to people who are in there. And we'll talk more about that. Actually, if I pause for 1 second, if you didn't see today, I posted on LinkedIn, I shared a post about how to do business with HHS, and I got rid of all the normal stuff they said. And I try to go in, I put like, I don't know, 25 or 30 people's names, numbers, and emails in there and some information on how to get in. So when you tie that together with data like this, it gives you a path to get into the agency you want. And you need to be visible in order to get any part of the end of the year spending that happens pretty fast, right? And so this is telling you where should you be looking. You should look at this and decide, am I already in some of the places that are going to do some of the end of the year spending, and go talk to your procurement officers. You know, you talk to the head of contracting officer or activity. You could talk to the individual contracting officers, but somehow you have to get out there. And these are the agencies that I would recommend you get out to as it relates to 8A direct awards. So here's just another way to look at all of them stacked from the smallest to the largest, right? But I just put this in here as a way for you to take this away with you. You can do a screenshot, or you can ask me for these slides. By the way, if you want a copy of these slides, just put slides, please, in the chat. And if you do that, then I will get you a copy of these slides over there. So let's talk about, we talked about the agencies that spent or awarded using sole source contracts, right? But let's talk about the top products and services that were out there. And this is just to give you an idea of where it's at. I'm not doing your deep dive for you. I'm trying to show you that the agencies are buying through sole source awards And these are some of the things they do. So the reason I really like this, and at the moment you can see I'm looking at NAICS codes, but this top one, 236220, commercial, whatever, that's basically construction, right? So the biggest spend is in construction. But right after that is just a slew of professional services, right? 611 is administrative management, and then computer related. 541990 is basically computer related. 541330, even though it says engineering services, it's also a lot of the computer related purchases that the Navy does. Seaport Next Gen is their primary NAICS code is that. And so you can see all this computer stuff. There is some remediation in here, but there's a huge amount of professional spending. So don't think it's all just going to be construction or product purchases, right? And let's look at this in a different way. So here it's just with the PCS codes. I don't particularly pay attention myself to PCS codes. I actually don't even like the NAICS codes. I like keywords when I'm looking for things. And you can do searches based on that as well. I just took it this way so you could, if you're following the numbers, you can get it. But you can see where the spend is, right? And the professional support is where they're spending a lot of the time and their money as they're investing in. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through here, and then I want to go into USA spending and show you how I do it in there. And when I'm over there, actually, Gus or Cease, if you guys see somebody says an agency, let me know and text it to me. I'll try to watch my text for the next few minutes. But really, it's 5 steps to get the data I just got, which will give you tremendous insight for your company on where you should be going. But you're going to log into USA Spending. You're going to press Start Search Reward. You're going to select your time period and the type of set aside, like I said. And then you're going to hit the Submit button. And there you go. You got the data, right? And I'm going to show you how you can filter down by agency and how you can filter down by some other tasks as well. So let me just pop back over here. I'm going to come in here to USA Spending. Here's USA Spending, right? I'm not going to give you a deep dive tutorial of it, but I am going to show you how to do what I just did for the data I got. And by the way, you could do the same exact thing for HubZone or something else. Just my training for now is on 8A. So the first thing is over on the left side, hopefully you can see it. The first thing is time period. You just want to select the fiscal year 2022. Now I've got that filter selected. And then I'm going to come down here to the bottom, and right here it says type of set aside, right? So I'm going to come up, and fortunately for me, the very top one is 8A sole source. That's all I'm looking for. And when I hit submit search, right? Let's go ahead and come back. There's my 16,117 connections. I mean, connections, that'd be a lot. Contracts, right? And so it's varied what that means, right? But loosely, that's that number. And when you come in, when I look at stuff like the data on the numbers, here it is seeing the whole year, 8.6 billion for 8As. I can just hit months and I can see it like that. And I can see quarters and you're seeing it like that, right? So the same data I showed you is right there. And then the only other thing I was going to show you over here is where you can look at the departments, right? So here is where I showed you first chart here, and then for the departments and then agencies. And I'm going pretty fast because I want to go in and show some stuff really quick. So somebody just said FEMA. Thanks, Gus. Somebody said FEMA, and that's perfect. So let me go in. And now you might want to whittle this down, right? You don't need to see the whole government. That's what I did to do a presentation to you. But what you're really looking for is your target agency. Where are you targeting? Where are you trying to grow your company? And so if I come in here, I can come in and just say awarding agencies, and let's see if FEMA works for me. There you go. So I'm just going to choose FEMA, and you got to love live trainings because I didn't test this, but let's go see what we got really quick. So FEMA had 147 activities last year. These are sole source. The thing I want to see is when did they do them? So if I come into the time and I go to months, I can now come in here and look at the timeline, right? I can see 15 million was done at the end of the year. And this is an interesting thing. Now, FEMA is pretty small for me for an agency, although they do a ton, but their spending tends to be around disasters, not calendars, right? Not months or something. But you can come in. Let me give you one other tip that I can do for this data when I'm looking at it. If I just want to see which ones are doing the most spending, is FEMA really doing the most spending at the end? I can say, show me 2022 to 9/30/2022. If I did that correctly, I've got the last quarter there, right? And I'll just hit submit search. and realize I did something wrong. Did I do something wrong with my dates? 9/30/2022. Yes. So it's important to type correctly. I didn't enter the year correctly. Okay, so now what I saw was, I don't know if you were able to see this, but right here where it has contracts in these tabs, before it was 157. So now it's 104, right? And I don't know if there's others that are in there, Gus, but if I come in, I can't, I don't know if I can as easily go down to Naval Surface Warfare Center. Let me just try Keyport, see if it works. Yeah, that's a little too low for me in here. But if I do FDA, right? So somebody asked about FDA. I'm going to search this, and I'm only looking at the last quarter. Remember, if you're in USA spending, you can go into the last quarter like this, and you, you go into at the top, you can see the filters that I have. So the period is the last quarter. I'm looking at FDA, and I'm looking at just 8A sole sources that happened at that point. So let me zoom out for 1 second. So here I can see that FDA had 87. And if I want to look at, I don't think I can go deeper on this. No. And if you look at FDA, this is another one, right? This is staggering to me that FDA went from 2 million, 1 million to 37 million. I don't know the reality of the situation, but I can tell you from experience, I feel like FDA contracting officers had a stack of something here, requirements, right? And they pulled off the top and they said, let's figure out what we can do. There's some that are just heavily kind of researched out there, and then a bunch more that are just really literally end of the year spending. Where can I find vendors who can solve the need? One thing I wanted to show you is right here. If I look at the obligation, and I just come in here and click this one for the moment, I'm just sorting by highest. If you look at FDA, this is again FDA, you're seeing a lot of several $1 million, right? This is the 8A world. It can go 4.5 million, I think. It could go a lot higher actually in DoD, but let's just say 4.5 million. There's a lot of that steady. When you look at 87 items and the first 20 we're looking at are all kind of north of 3 million, those are good wins for end of year spending. I know companies that are doing 20 and 30 million be totally happy with getting a couple of $2 or $3 million wins. Somebody else asked about MDA. Let me just see if I can do it. And you're seeing this pattern, right? I don't think MDA is going to be it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so missile defense. We're going in there. We're trying to decide, are you doing really any kind of spending at the end of the year? What's it look like? So they're a much smaller organization. And when you look at it, they only did 6. And if we look at the timeline by months, they pretty much did them all at the end. But such a tiny spending. If I was an 8A, I wouldn't even waste my time in MDA. By the way, I'm not saying if MDA, Missile Defense Agency, is your target agency not to go after it. I'm saying if you're trying to go after end of the year spending, go where they're spending money with 8A direct awards, right? You should be looking at this kind of data throughout the entire year. As you plan 2024, you should be planning, how does your target agency look out there? So hopefully that part made sense there. Let me go back and just get rid of this, submit the search, and just remind you here, just remind you that this stuff, you can use the tools on your own. What I want you to remember from today's training is that if you're an 8A with past performance, right? If you got core competency and you got matching past performance in that core competency, then make a plan to go after some of this end of the year sole sourcing that happens. That should not be your sales strategy through the year. To me, I call that bonus, right? You plan how do you get your 5 or 10 or $20 million in revenue this year or new sales this year. You plan for that and you do the work to get there. But you know the government is doing some end of the year spending that is more like a freshly stocked pond with fish. All you have to do is drop your hook in. I do not mean that for anybody who's new. But if you've got some solid experience and you're right where the government is and they don't have a lot of time to do market research or a long procurement life cycle, then you are a viable company for them, a vendor for them. You are procurement ready. So if you have past performance in your core competency, make a plan around it. If you're not an 8A, but you do have past performance, I know a company that has SharePoint, for example, go find some 8As and make sure they know who you are And that, if they come across SharePoint opportunities for end of the year spending, love to team up with you. 49-51 split. That's a normal way of doing business. You bring your expertise, they bring the access to the 8A set-asides. So remember, we've got more of this training all through the year. I just wanted to say thank you to the sustaining members of this training of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. You're who makes all of this possible, right? You, me, we support the chamber, and we provide this training to small businesses from Guam to the U.S. Virgin Islands and every single state in between. And I'm really proud of what we do, and I'm very thankful for your participation. Hey, if you're a company that's looking to go to the next level, you already have traction, you're doing $2+ million, or in that range, then consider joining my BD Accelerator. It's a BD Accelerator workshop, 90-day workshop. And I'm really trying to find 5 firms that I can guide through the end of the year here, this end of the year spending, not necessarily the spending part, but the workshop will accelerate you into that activity. So if you want to go to the next level and you've got that past performance that can help you win, send me a message. I'll shoot you some information. Also, don't forget, if you want these slides, just go ahead and put slides, please, into the chat. Remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.